As the weeks went by, winter came to Ponyville in a force. Even on the rare sunny days, the temperature never rose high enough to melt such snow that blanketed on the grounds. Drifts rose slowly but surely as plowers worked daily to keep the roads relatively passable. Rarity never went out high without high heavy boots and a long coat to protect herself from the muddy slush. But that was the extent of which she allowed the weather to hinder her. She visited the library, town hall, and more well-to-do of the town's merchants, and even had gotten an informational interview with Filthy Rich. Although she kept her inquiries generic, rumors say that she always moved fast in small towns, and she already had begun to receive pointed inquiries at the marketplace about wherever she was thinking of starting a business in Ponyville. She deflected the increasing curiosity, but the truth was that her heart was slowly, almost completely set on it. Running her own fashion line had been a distant, almost mystical goal for her, something that happened after years of climbing industry ladders, not barely out of university. The more she researched, however, the less insane it seemed. To her surprise, her father, in particular, had been especially enthusiastic about the idea of the moment she had first hinted at over dinner. You know, Rarity, setting up shop by yourself was the only way it was done back in my dad's day, he said cheerfully. I remember just how confused he was when I wanted to pack up and join a sports journalism firm in Manhattan. He thought, I ought to stay here and take over the Ponyville Express. I wonder every now and then would it have been off different if I had gotten that way instead. Well, we wouldn't have met, for starters, her mother had called from the kitchen, teasing to edge her voice. And that's one thing I'd never change, her father replied firmly. But seriously, Marshmallow, there's no pony in Equestria who can hold a candle to your talent. If you decide you want to do it alone, we'll be behind you 100%. He mustered his mane at this point. As he fought for him off, she had laughed at the Janine manner for the first time in what felt like months. After that, time had become something of a blur. Her desk was piled with notes and letters, the most recent being quotes from the bank and the other prompted parties. She had firmly ruled out the building with a brand new establishment. There was simply no way she could afford it, even with the surprisingly generous grants for incoming businesses available through Town Hall. Purchasing a location and repurposing it, however, was surprisingly within her resources. And so with the wealth optimistic, though by no means definite information. A bright but cold winter morning found her making her way through the frozen sludge to the local realty of the office, located in the northern end of town. The office was a low, broad cottage-like had, and like so many businesses in town, probably have been converted from a dedicated home into a combined office space in the apartment. There were flyers taped around the front of the windows that displayed grainy photographs of homes for sale in town, and all that one were stamped with the offer pending in red ink. Verity couldn't help but wonder if her innovators might shut down merely by a lack of available real estate. But she pushed through the thought aside before squaring her shoulders and heading inside. The first things that greeted her were the tiny tolls of the cluster of bells that hung above the door, followed immediately after the strains of classical music distorted by the fuzzy whispers, gentle pops, and faint metallic echo of the gramophone. The second was the smell. As soon as the door opened, a warm breeze was sucked out into the cold past Rarity, carrying currents of cinnamon and cloves in such concentrations that they stung her nose, in the third which assailed Rarity's senses just as she began to notice the rich, worn patterns of upholstery on the dark wood furniture, was a bright pink earth pony who, presumably in the excitement of having some pony enter the office, had cleared the reception desk in one spring and yanked Rarity inside with a hoof shake that would rattle Celestia herself. "Hi there," the pony chirped, in a high-pitched voice that reminded Rarity unpleasantly of Sweetie Belle. "Welcome to Mortgage Realty. We are one-stop shop for all of your property needs." Hello," Rarity said, finally extracting her hoof from the pony's two-hoofed grasp. She had the vague sense that she had seen this mare somewhere once before, but couldn't quite place it. "Pleased to make your acquaintance, Miss Pinkie Pie, but you could just call me Pinkie," she replied in the same chirper tone. "And you're Rarity. I'm so surprised you don't remember me. I chipped in to help with your mom's full shower for your little sister, so of course I remember you." Rarity couldn't imagine how anyone could ever be around this mare and not remember her. She had made only a token appearance at the full shower, though, so she thought perhaps she had simply missed speaking to Pinkie. "Now that you're here because you're in need of a super terrific new store for your incredible new dress shop. Wait, how do you know about... Pfft, don't be silly. Every pony in Ponyville knows you're going to be opening an awesome store for dresses and suits of all kinds of fancy schmancy haute couture," Pinkie Pie explained in a staccato barrage, confidently and primly murdering the pronunciation of haute couture because to something that sounded more like hot couture. "Pinkie, did some pony come in?" another voice with a slight Canterlot accent called from the other room. "Yes, ma'am," Pinkie called back. "We have a prospect." "Now, really, Miss Pie," Rarity sputtered, "I'm just here to—" "Oh, lovely. Be a dear and offer our guests some tea and coffee, won't you? I won't be but a minute." "Sure thing. Want any tea, Rarity?" Pinkie asked, snapping her bright blue eyes back at Rarity. "I just made the most delicious spicy cha. It's the perfect thing for these chilly pre-holiday gloomy days." Yes, actually, that would be lovely," Rarity said. Before Rarity could finish, Pinkie was out of the room, disappearing into a hallway with a few bounds that brushed an enormous frizz on the mane against the ceiling. "You..." Rarity glanced around, taking a full stock of the room for the first time. Finding a heavy tray for keeping outdoor shoes by the door, she had shed her filthy boots and left them to dry before walking further into the room. Although the outside looked like a very typical country cottage, the interior had been remodeled and furnished into an old-fashioned Canterlonian style. The stone walls had been paneled over, the dark wood polished into a golden gloss. Overstuffed furniture was upholstered in pale greens and golds, and a fire burned bright and hot in a slightly incourageous white stone hearth. Although it was charming, the sudden heat crowded nature of this room made her feel a touch suffocated, and a heavy odor of winter spices wasn't helping. Even the music, which she now recognized as Hector's Burwell's Sympathy Fantastique, sounded slow and stiff like the thick, hot air. Hello, the owner of the voice said, trotting out of what probably her main office and closing the door behind her. "Sounds like my receptionist already welcomed you, but welcome anyway. Minimum mortgage pleased to meet you." She was a middle-aged earth pony with a steel-gray coat and a mane and tail of dusty blue, which age had streaked in with vibrant and silver. Her wore ever severe-looking octagonal spectacles with gray wire frames, but the smile beneath them was so mild and kind, she looked like she could be some pony's favorite grandmother. Although aside from the graying hair, she didn't appear very old. "Rarity, pleased to meet you as well, Miss Mortgage," she said, intending to shake the other's hoof gently, but instead of finding her ankle wrapped in a firm hold, with a shaken with vigor. "Oh no, for Celestia's sake, just Minnie will do." she replied, rolling her eyes and laughing. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. Would you like the tea in the office? Pinky asked, emerging from the hallway carrying back what appeared to be a complete silver tea service that would have been at home at Noble's drawings room through several centuries ago. That would be lovely, Pinky. Please, Rarity, come in and warm yourself up. Then you could tell me what we can do for you. Pinky, would you be so kind as to take the guest's coat and scarf? Hang them on the rack by the door. There's a good girl. Yes, ma'am, Pinky chirped, and Rarity gratefully allowed herself to be relieved of her garments, which had already become stifling. Although the office was furnished with the much same way as the reception area, Rarity was pleased to note that there was no additional fireplace. Can I get you anything else, my dear? Minnie asked, sitting at her desk and busying herself with the tea service. The way she said dear reminded Pinky of her mother. I'm sure there are some fresh pastries out there. Pinky's always bringing in some kind of little treat to share throughout the day. I swear I've gained 10 pounds since she started here. No, thank you, Rarity said, sitting on the large overstuffed chairs opposite to her. Your assistant is very energetic. That's an understatement, Minnie said, with a smile that conveyed into an ongoing amused schmuck more than anything else. She's a lifesaver, though. When I hired her 8 months ago, I was 2 months behind on paperwork and had no filling system to speak of. That's my weakness. Shamefully, could never get quite organized. 4 weeks in and she already caught everything up and built me a new filing system from scratch. She passed an ordinary bone-like porcelain cup and saucer to Rarity. Now then, what's brought you to us today? Well, I've been doing some research and interviewing local merchants and alike, Rarity said, gently stirring the cup of cube sugar into the tea. I've been exploring the possibility of getting my professional start here in Ponyville, and the next step to see is what might be available in terms of shop space now or in the future. She paused, taking a sip of her tea. The sugar didn't take in the bitter edge of a spice, but no trace of grimace crossed her face, though judging by the flyers at the window, I may not be in for much luck. I know it's a small town, but... Silence fell, as Minnie waved the comments off, steam rising from her scalding tea obscuring her eyes behind the fogged glasses. Oh, those are residential properties. I doubt you'd be interested in them. They're all on the outskirts of town and nowhere near market. But there are options practically in terms of undeveloped land. Might I ask, what type of business are you looking for to start? Strictly conventional, of course. Rarity hesitated for a moment, then replied, A fashion outlet. She let her cup down and looked directly into Minnie's eyes. Retail for fine modern made-to-order and custom-fitted designs. I'll be developed all of the new lines and managing production myself, so I need a showroom, dressing the room's space for the workshop, and it wouldn't be amiss if I could live there. Instead of my parents' home in the West End, she finished. She watched Mimi's eyes for any sign of scorn, amusement, or mockery. She had watched the expressions of every pony she had spoken to in indications of judgment. She wasn't sure why she kept expecting it, even feared seeing it. Minnie, for her part, only showed intrigued. The difficulty is, Rarity continued, I really don't have the funds to build everything from scratch. I was hoping for something like the shops surrounding the marketplace might have the flats above the store, she trailed off, when she noticed Minnie pursing her lips. None of those are for sale, or let, I'm afraid. All the businesses there are quite established, however. She tapped her hoof on her desk, gleam coming to her eye. How's that your budget for renovation? Well, Rarity said slowly, all I have in rough estimates. I really can't say for sure. I've been budgeting to repurpose and redecorate the interior of anything I might find. Oh, thank heavens. I love when we get some pony who thinks ahead. Minnie sighed happily and stood to walk over to one of the wooden filing cabinets along the wall. You and I are going to get along famously. With that said, I'm afraid you're not in the market for underdeveloped land, and we might have a hard time for it. But if you're willing to just take a teensy bit out of the box, She glanced at Rarity and smiled conspiratically. I think I might just have the thing just to interest you. She dug through the rows of manila folders, then pulled one out triumphantly. Aha, there she is. Have a look. Rarity looked at the offered folder and pulled out the contents. She stopped, however, when she saw the first photograph in a town like Ponyville. There weren't exactly many unfamiliar buildings, but even a newcomer would have been likely to recognize the building shown. Old Town Hall? She asked. The photo was older than the ones posted on the window outside, had surely been taken with the poorer equipment. The camera looked at the building straight on, like someone had been photographing the specimen instead of the house that they wanted to showcase and sell. A glance at the documents soon within made sense of the anomaly, all labeled, but not with Minnie's branding, but the local seals of the various offices of the city of Ponyville. The building itself was ugly, rotund thing, distinctively different from every sense of the architecture and decoration of most of Ponyville. It was set apart from most of the homes surrounding it, almost left alone as the very edge of the southern end of town. In all of her time at Ponyville, Rarity had never once seen it or used a had to heard any pony talk about it. Growing up, she always had the idea that it would be a subject of idiotic dares and stories from her fellow school ponies. But like the adults, Full seemed to content and pretended that it just simply didn't exist. It was like an old dilapidated shed in some pony's backyard, an eyesore, but completely uninteresting and without use. She couldn't remember the last time she had given it a second thought. Is this a joke? Rarity asked, raising her eyebrows at Minnie. Well, I know it's not much to look at right now, the retailer explained, picking up her tea again. But if you give a look, you'll find exactly what you're hoping for. Minnie quickly took Rarity's lack of enthusiasm as a sign of unflattering photographs, and her word alone were not going to hold Rarity's attention for long, so she wasted no time pursuing Rarity to accompany her to see it directly. Since Rarity had already committed her day checking out the possibilities, she assisted. She was happy for a reason to escape the sweltering warmth of Minnie's office. It's actually one of the oldest buildings in town, Minnie explained as they trotted through the slushy street towards the south end. But maybe you already knew that. The only buildings that still remained were there before are the apple farm and the backyard bargains. The town outgrew the old town hall at some point, so they moved everything to a bigger facility that became the town hall we knew today. Hey, I really can't blame them. You could probably fit one old one inside the new and still have filing space, but they remodeled after the new town hall. This one is a homage, and I'm sure you'll notice elements of Gilded Age architecture present in both. And there she is. Minnie pointed as they turned the corner of the marketplace, looking down a long straight lane that led straight to the edge of town. Terminating at the doorstep of the old town hall, it loomed over the marketplace even at the distance, with more of the dark mouth of a tunnel than a physical building. The circular walls were built of some kind of dark, unpainted wood, stained with almost black in some places of years only of basic upkeep. The grimy glass of severe square windows flanking the door reflected no light and opened to even darker depths of behind the gloomy walls. A circular roof blackened, splitting shingles swept upwards towards the walls of the second level. A turret whose smaller rectangular windows swept a good watchful, almost sinister gaze over the entire room. It was capped with the conical roof, whose sagging overhang was supported by square, dark wooden pillars that surrounded the upper windows. The roof itself swept up to a crown that repeated and littered the pillared patterns of the lower levels. The building probably had been considered ornate when it was built. Now it was a shallow imitation of the opponent, like the cake-like tiered towers that have defied the Gilded Age more than 80 years ago. Any charm it might have was worn away ages ago. As you can see, it's not really that far from the business district, Minnie said, leading Rarity down the road towards the old hall. Just a few blocks, and with the commanding view of this entire street, I don't think you'll see any trouble letting ponies know you're here. It's certainly noticeable, Rarity said grimly. I can't imagine why another business hasn't slapped this one up. It wasn't allowed, Minnie said, possibly missing Rarity's sarcasm. It's been a really care of the town government for decades, but it was only last year that I, the solicitor's office, were notified of it being declared bona vancata. That's fancy talk for, well, truly abandoned, dear. It was left unclaimed? Rarity asked. Precisely. After the city government office moved to the few business calls that came and went before, it was left unoccupied. I haven't bothered looking into the circumstances. They only told me that in 30 years no pony has stepped forward to claim every right of it, and that it opens up for auction. If you're curious, I'm sure I can look into the details for you. Rarity said non-commentedly. They reached the end of the road and saw the hall now seemed taller than Rarity had ever remembered noticing before. Even with only 2 levels, it was certainly one of the tallest buildings in Ponyville, with this exaggerated roofs and spire that was probably visible from almost anywhere in town. Is it really that much of a part of the local landscape that none of us noticed such dark, ugly thing stabbing up into the sky anymore? One eyebrow raised of obvious skepticism. She instead asked, "And what makes you inclined to think that this place would suit my needs?" "Well, let's just take a look and see," Minnie said, fishing a monstrous bulk of jangling keys from her coat and stepping up to the door. Like windows, it was square and seemed taller than most doors around town, and had a dark glass of window framed just above a comfortable level. Minnie took an obscenely long time sorting through the keys, and Rarity was starting to shiver by the time she finally found the large chunky key, fitted it into the lock. She had to fight with it a little, but finally the lock ground open and released the door. To Rarity's surprise, it opened with only a short, almost warm groan of protest, and Minnie lettered into the dark interior. "I wish I could tell you it would be like stepping into another time," Minnie said, "but I'm afraid that over the years, almost everything that was left inside was auctioned to antique dealers to cover the cost of looking after it. But I've had it inspected, and I can assure you that the town did a fair job of keeping everything in good condition." Huge proactive linens fell to the floor with the thin, squealing rustles of protest as Minnie pulled them away from the curtains they protected. As she drew the monstrously thick curtains from back behind the looming windows, gray light fought its way into the room and brought the majority of the first floor into view. Somehow the high, vaulted ceiling was left undisturbed into total darkness. Even all with the sickly light, there was not much left to see. The huge featureless from the room looked up the most to ground level, and was almost entirely empty. There were piles of linen that were probably protected long-gone furniture, piled in various places on an ancient, scarred desk, one against the wall. A few chairs that Rarity couldn't trust to hold up her own weight much longer, and that long piece of furniture was still draped in white that, by the looks of it, might be an old-fashioned chase lounge. "There is a staircase through the nook just back there, and also a door leading to the kitchen," Minnie explained, stepping further into the room. The floor was carpeted, but it was covered in so much dust that Rarity had to look in her own footsteps just to see the color. It was a horrendous mess of red, gold, and blue, laid ornate fleur-de-lis patterns that it had. In decades past, maybe it resembled tasteful design. After the offices moved, one of the subsequent owners remodeled and installed it into necessary fixtures for a comfortable living. The icebox was gone, but I think you'll find many company of those old ovens and stoves to last, so it's one of the items off your wish list. And just look at the spacious main room. She turned in wide-eyed circle, looking around the dark reaches like a filly moving into her first big house. "I don't know much about clothing stores, but I bet you could find a way to turn this into a wonderful showroom. It has the necessary space. At least there's no doubt about that. Rarity looked around the dust-covered, detritus-riddled space and tried to see if anything something in it. For a moment all she could see was the decay, the stiff and ugly woodwork, and then her eyes narrowed at thought. It was almost like sizing up a client. Color, shape, space, and what's the interior decorating but dressing up an old building? Draw out its best features and hide the rest. Balance and physics with practically. Details started fading into place before her eyes, almost as if they were being painted into the empty space in front of her. Pale palanquin models, laid in dresses, would line the front walls. Racks of designs should be ready for appraisal by customers circling the room. There could be a raised dais of batteries and mirrors for custom fitting. To the left, artfully arranged curtains could cordon off stations for makeup and jewelry. Another set of hangings, and she would have the luxurious fitting rooms ready for discerning furniture clients. Colors flashed in her mind, but she tried every one of them to let go on the walls. It was like choosing a dress from the rack. Reds, golds, blues. No, too garnish green. Heavens no, not with these walls. Light and airy's the way. We need to make everything feel open. She shook her head. The vision had drained away. I can't believe it. It has potential, she said slowly. You said there's a kitchen. What about a bedroom and a workshop? Right this way, Minnie said, her smile widening as she headed back the dark stairway, hidden in the far wall. It all depends on your preferences. There is a basement, but that's probably intended for storage, so it isn't all that spacious. However, the upper floor is very roomy, and with some work, you could divide it up into several quite usable rooms. Although I hear artistic types of sometimes fancy the studio approach, you could certainly save that cost away. They went up to the stairway into the short, narrow hall. There was a closet on one side that Minnie said was luxurious. If slightly small, bathroom on the other. The bedroom faced them at the end of the hall. Watch your step, Minnie warned. I probably should have brought a light. There are windows in this room, and you'll notice the light fixtures have been placed quite conveniently throughout. She gestured to sconce on the hall. It was an ordinarily worked metal fitting from across frosted glass covers, and the valve barely visible just beneath. By the way, those are original pieces from the period, dear. Thankfully, it's never became necessary to start gutting the place. I'm afraid these are an old type, just the simple flame jets, really. But it's really simple and cheap to swap out the jets with incandescent gas mantles, just like you'd find in any modern room. She opened the door and led Rarity to the second level. Just a moment, dear. Let me get those windows and gives us some light. She crossed over to the opposite wall, where one huge window had a few smaller ones dominated the wall. When lit, the second floor was almost barren as the first, and it somehow managed to stay even darker than the windows open. Square pillars circled around the room, holding the arched, angular beams beneath the conical roof that receded away into total darkness above them. From somewhere in that cavernous shadow, an ordinary chandelier hung on the chain, and on the other end, which was fastened into place on the wall beside the door to allow it to be easily lowered and lit. It was certainly roomy. Rarity couldn't deny that. The circular room had space for a desk 5 times the size of one at home, shelves for fabric, storage, accessories, mirrors, and... She turned and only saw the piece of furniture that had survived the various auctions throughout the years. An enormous princess-sized 4-poster bed made of solid dark wood, with little decorative accents in the gold filigree, a rich purple canopy, and quilt. Minnie was standing beside it, smiling at Rarity's gaping expression. Something told me you liked this little bonus, she said. Well, not its original, but definitely the same period. Probably the inheritance from a wealthier family. At least I know one's dealer has been eyeing this piece like a hawk for it to finally open up on the auction block. I wouldn't blame if you decide to disappoint her. but I would at least replace the mattress with something a touch newer." Rarity nodded vigorously. She couldn't imagine what kind of craftsmanship had gone into a mattress decades ago, but she suspected a lot more metal would have been put in that was reasonable. She was about to speculate this out loud when she heard a sharp metallic clack from downstairs, and the short groan of a door opening echoed up the staircase. "Did you hear that?" Rarity asked. Minnie tilted her head in confusion. "I think somebody else is in here. I just heard the downstairs door." She glanced towards the dark hallway and the stairs failing away into the blackness. Far beyond, her ears arched forward, grasping the hints of the noise below. She couldn't be so sure, but in her mind she questioned herself wherever there was just the faintest repetitive thump of hooves treading across the old carpet leading towards the stairs, looking for the ones who had disturbed the coverings over the windows and let in the light. "Oh, I bet that was the basement door," Minnie grumbled, breaking Rarity's sense of scrutiny, and trotted over towards the hat. "I'll have a look, just to make sure some pony hadn't gone curious about us. But lots of city workers over the years have reported coming to inspect things, only to find it hanging open. It's either gone warped with age, or the latch is sticky. I can't believe they never bothered to fix it. Luckily for you, it should be an easy repair if it bothers you." Rarity allowed Minnie to show the rest of the place with the guard enthusiasm. The bathroom Minnie had said was small, the twice size of the one she currently shared with her mother and father. Sweetie Belle, and it was filled with fixtures that she only seen in illustrations of historic noble ponies' home. A bit insignificant, to be sure, she had nearly swooned with giddy delight on the sight elaborately cushioned, solid copper tub, the kitchen which doubled as the washroom, and equally acquainted, but since she had doubted she would ever do any elaborate cooking, it probably would serve her well enough. As Minnie had cautioned, the basement wouldn't be good for other than storage. The ceiling was also low and she could feel her mane brush against it. Aside from the unfortunately empty wine racks that lined the wall, there was nothing else down there but stacks of old paintings and some lumber piled up against the walls. With the amount of space that could be used for work on the upper level, however, it was no loss. As she lifted, she sized up the exterior exactly she had in the showroom. As ghastly as it wasn't impossible with a little paint, or a lot of it, and had some simple remodeling. She could make it something that would draw Pony's attention and wonder again. In fact, she thought, I bet I can make a crown jewel out of the town, and a fixture elegant beauty that demands adoration. But there was still so much to think about. She had forced herself to tell Minnie as much as when they parted ways, Minnie didn't push the matter, which Rarity was grateful for. Yet one more piece of the puzzle, and turned out to be a complete more promising than she ever dared had hoped to be. It was looking more and more like opening her very own boutique was a real possibility. I suppose it might be safe to have a little fun and think of a name for it, she mused. What harm could there be in that? What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.